everyone. I'm Randy here for IGN Anime Club, episode 3.
Yay!
Yay! We did it!
We did it, episode 3! As always, I am joined by Elena Yee.
Hi.
And Megan Sullivan.
What's up, guys?
And we have a new guest.
Yes.
Marty!
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Hey.
This is
a
awesome.
Marty.
I think I told you at the beginning that if you guys talk about Cowboy Bebop, I want to be on.
This is our first episode to actually talk about Cowboy Bebop.
best.
So I felt
I'm
it was
excited.
completely necessary to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So I'm really happy we made it to episode 3. You guys seem to be liking it pretty well. I just want to mention at the beginning of the show that we are on iTunes.
Yay!
It has happened. Finally. Woo!
It only took 2 weeks.
Are we on the Zune marketplace? No?
I
The
don't
Microsoft
know.
Zune. Is that still a thing?
I thought they
Isn't it dead?
I think it's
discontinued
dead.
that.
Well, I'm gonna make some calls.
Okay.
Are you Googling Zune
Be one of the
Marketplace?
only
I need to
podcasts.
know this. I mean, I feel like it's a badge of shame if I don't.
Yeah, you're the tech editor, so.
I know.
Yeah, so I just want to let you guys know that if you guys can download the podcast off of something else aside from Libsyn, we have iTunes. So, yay.
Awesome. That's the best.
So let's get into the show. We're going to start off, as always, with what we're watching so you guys can keep up with, current anime or old anime that we're checking out. I'm actually most interested to see what Marty's watching.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. So aside from Cowboy Bebop, which is my homework, which I want to watch forever, I'm rewatching Boogie Pop Phantom. Did you guys ever watch that?
Nope.
Back in the day? So that was on, I'm pretty sure it was on Toonami, which we'll talk about later when we talk about how we got into anime. But it's a story of a bunch of Japanese school-aged kids and sort of the rash of suicides that starts happening in their community, and how it's all it's not, you think in the opening you sort of think that it's, oh, this is gonna be a realistic take on it, but it's nope, this whole town is haunted. And, these kids, the suicides are part of this much more nefarious thing. And it was one of those shows that I remember loving 10 years ago, and I sort of wanted to go back and see if it still holds up. And I'm only a couple episodes in now, and it totally does. Totally super great. And aside from Cowboy Bebop, I saw Ghost in the Shell over the weekend at the Roxy Theater.
Nice.
The original movie.
Oh,
And
nice.
So it was the first time.
Big screen.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Wait, it's your first time watching it on the big screen or first time
Yes,
watching it ever?
first time on the big screen. And again, I probably hadn't seen it in 6 or 7 years. And that was super cool. Anytime there's so many movies that I love that I've never had a chance to actually see in theaters.
Right.
And so whenever they play them at either second-run theaters or places like the Castro in San Francisco, I always try to see those. And then I've been flirting with the idea of getting into, you and James Faulkner a while ago talked about Kill la Kill.
Kill la Kill!
So
Yes,
let's see
he's from Kill la Kill.
Okay.
Slutsky,
Oh,
so
really? Oh, now
non-video people
Now
were
I feel
pointing to the
bad.
desk.
Non-video people. You're not talking to Salaryman Pikachu or Charmander Pikachu.
No. Yeah.
Wait, is that Charmander Pikachu?
It's like Mega Charizard Pikachu.
Oh, okay.
So he's got
Oh, we got a new Pikachu. I totally
Yeah.
missed it.
Yep.
So
There he is.
when we get to episode 100, this desk is just going to be littered with Pikachu.
This entire room is me filled with
Yeah.
Pikachus.
Pikachu's?
So,
Pikachu?
Pikachus. There's
Pikachu's?
multiple
Is that the
Qs.
plural?
I
It's a
think
Pikachu.
technically we
Pikachus.
probably should just say Pikachu and just use it the way we
Like
would
Amiibo?
deer. Yeah.
Deers? I say
Deer.
deers.
Sheep.
Sheeps.
Sheeps.
But I add an
That's a
S
good
for
question.
funsies.
Yeah.
I think it's usually Pikachus. There's multiple Pikachu. Pikachu?
Pika choice. I don't know. Yes.
Anyway.
So, but Kill la Kill is the thing. I'm currently finishing up a bunch of TV shows, but once I'm done with those,
Yeah,
I
kick
think
those
we can
aside.
jump
Just watch Kill la Kill.
I
It's only 26 episodes.
I know, that's true. And they're short. I know. I need to. But then Game of Thrones and Mad Men came back and started ruining everything.
Yeah, Game of Thrones takes all priority.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know, right?
anything. It's
Because that's also the thing. I don't want to come in the office and have it spoil. I don't think anyone's going to spoil Kill la Kill on a Monday morning, but
No.
Game of Thrones is probably going to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So that's what.
So.
So I see what you guys are watching, and I don't know what any of it is. So I'm very excited to learn.
Yeah, so most of the stuff I watch is new things. I try to go through a backlog and pick up an older show to watch with the season. But right now I'm not, because I'm trying to watch the first episode of every show that's coming out this season. And there are a ton of shows.
Yeah.
So
Did you
many
count
good
them
shows
yet?
too. I didn't count all of them, but I
'Cause-
think I'm through. I finished this past weekend of watching all the new
Okay,
shows.
because I swear, just from a glance at it, it's got to be over 20.
Oh yeah, well over
Yeah.
20, maybe 30, and there's a lot of shorts too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't always watch all the shorts because some of them are for kids, and it's doesn't appeal to anybody
Totally.
in this
Totally.
office,
Yeah.
or anybody that's probably watching.
So I mean, how do you just dive in and watch them, or do you go based on recommendations? Because if I try to watch every new sitcom that premiered in the fall, I'd have to watch a ton of garbage.
Yeah. So I watch a ton of garbage.
You sift through the garbage. Yeah.
She does it as a service
Yeah.
for everybody
That's- yeah.
Yeah, so-
listening.
One thing I always like to write, which it is coming, I promise. I've talked about this the past 3 episodes, is my it's kind of like a preview of like the most promising shows that are coming out in this season.
That's awesome.
And we don't get the episodes early or anything, so I just have to watch them as they air. And
Yeah,
sometimes the first episode doesn't air for like 2 weeks after everything else. And we still haven't seen Digimon Try. It's supposed to come out in spring. We don't even have a release date, but I think we're gonna get some stuff in May, which is like super late in the
That's
season.
what I was about to say. That's
like,
only
oh,
like a month
just
left of spring.
Do your own thing,
Yeah.
Digimon, whatever. So
You be you, Digimon.
yeah, you do you. I do try to like watch everything and kind of get the best feel for what's out there, and I try to include things that may not be necessarily in my taste, but are promising maybe to like a general audience or something.
Totally.
So it's a lot.
What have been the standouts so far?
There are quite a few. Actually, I almost just want to bring up my list. We've talked about them a few times, like Plastic Memories. Ore Monogatari is really good, or My Love Story. And there's a ton of other ones. Ones that I want to note specifically for this week was Food Wars, Shokugeki no Soma. So most people just kind of call it Food Wars too, for short. And it's about this kid just graduating from middle school, about to go to high school. He has to choose which high school he wants to go to, but he's decided that he doesn't want to go to high school because he wants to work in his father's restaurant. He's been working with his father all this time. Like, he's been training to get better than him. Like, his ultimate goal is to be better chef than his father. It's kind of like a cool show. Like, okay, yeah, he's trying to be better. He decides he doesn't want to go to like a high school, and then his father decides to go close the shop and go travel abroad and cook with friends.
Oh,
and so he's like, no, sorry, you have to go to high school.
Yeah.
But then he ends up sending him to like this mega, like the elite cooking school in Japan.
Like the
And so, like,
culinary blue of Japan.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So everyone there is like very pompous and like, oh, I come from this fancy restaurant that has like 20 billion chains and it's like world renowned, and all these like really pompous kind of people who have their like noses in the air. And he's just like, oh, well, my family has a diner.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is
So
this
it's kind of.
is this the one that's kind of like food porn, or is that a different
Yes.
anime?
So
Okay.
that's the kicker, is that when people like eat his food, this show is very like erotic. Like the women kind of like moan and like their clothes sometimes like rip off, but it's just so funny and like really well done. So etchy.
I was about to ask before that. I was like, this sounds like it's like really grounded in reality. And then we got to that. And I'm like, all right, well, a little bit.
Yeah, so like the story is also just like super interesting though. Like, I'm really enjoying it. Sometimes like I said, etchy is all up in the show. So if you're like uncomfortable with like nudity or like kind of like moaning and stuff, then obviously the show may not be for you.
Is that a term,
But-
etchy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
etchy is like
It's a Japanese word for kind of like like pervy.
hentai.
kind of,
Okay.
but it's not actual sex or anything.
Sure,
like
sure.
it's like
Just
sexual
eroticism.
themes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like very erotic, but it's not actually like sex or anything. So it's just really funny and super well done. Yeah, I've been watching that. I was happy. I was like, yes, there's 3 episodes out, so I just like watched through all of it.
All right, I'm gonna check this one out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hilarious. The characters are really well done. Like the protagonist, he has that very like fighting, like I want to be better than my father kind of attitude. And sometimes that comes off as a little annoying because you see a lot of shonen characters being like, I'm gonna be the best, kind of. I'm gonna do this one thing and I'm gonna conquer it, kind of thing. But his comes off as more sincere and very loving for what he does. And so it just makes him like so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Does he have a rivalry with his father? Is there some sort of like
It's like a
issue going on there?
It's like a loving rivalry in a way. Like he is definitely, his father's ultimately his biggest challenge until like he goes to the cooking school, which you kind of getting hints of that there's more people there he might have to be challenged against. But ultimately that is his main rival, I guess. And it's really
sounds cool.
cute.
Yeah. I got worried when I read Food Wars on this that was like a Guy Fieri anime. I'm like, I'm totally out.
So the best thing also,
Can't be on this episode.
the other great thing is that they make such amazing food in the
just
show.
looks really good.
Yes, I'm like, I want to make that.
What's
I
an
want that in
example
my
of some
life.
of the food that you've
So
seen?
the very first episode, his challenge is that these people are coming in and they want to buy the restaurant to make an apartment building over the lot. So, and then he's like, no, you can't buy it. And his father's like, this is before he sends him off to school. And he's like, no, you can never take this restaurant. We'll have it forever, kind of thing, the kid is. And so the people who want to buy it go in and ransack their fridge and just like ruin all of their ingredients. And the kid's coming back to go, or Soma, he's going back to go prepare breakfast for him and his dad. And he sees them there. And then she's like, well, you said before that your ultimate goal in order for you to be a successful restaurant is to always please your customers. And I want you to make me a meat dish right now. And if you can't, then you should just shut down your restaurant because then you failed.
Yeah.
And he's just like, the meat's all bad.
Yeah, yeah.
But luckily, he brought food with him. So what he ends up doing is he only has bacon, so he can make a meat dish, but not like a true like full-on meat dish.
Yeah.
So what he ends up doing is he gets all these potatoes and kind of like mashes them up and mixes them with like sauces and seasonings. And then he wraps the potatoes in bacon and he broils it. And so all the like bacon juices get soaked into the potatoes and it's like super creamy, like super just saucy and tastes meaty.
You
and
can't
stuff.
lose with bacon.
No,
Right.
It's impossible.
I was
And
like,
then-
that sounds like eating in America.
It's so
Yeah.
good. And then
Kind of awesome.
Yeah, so like one of the big things too is that this kid's like really creative with his cooking. And so he's really imaginative of what he does, and that's a big signature thing about his family's diner is that they do like traditional cooking but also really imaginative cool foods that you wouldn't expect other places. And so and then he makes like amazing sauce and then he serves it to her and she's just like, like crazy orgasm happy.
Yeah.
And then she leaves. So then it's okay, like save the day, yay!
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then like this food just looks amazing. It's like give it to me. And the cool thing is that the manga actually has recipes in the back for what they make.
Oh, that's super cute.
So
I like that a lot.
yeah, so it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Definitely check out the show
Yeah.
if you're okay with ecchi. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, also watching Fate's Day Night. That's not new. Second season.
Mhm.
It's vamping up. It's based off a visual novel. These kids have like magical powers, and they summon warriors for them to fight for like a grail, like the Holy Grail. And if they win, they can get the grail possibly if they don't destroy each other first, and get a wish. So that's kind of like the base premise. Like it's getting really into the story, of course, because it's the second season. So I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's really good, and you should check it out. And the fighting is beautiful. So it's amazing animation.
Beautiful in what way? Just the art direction, or
Yeah, like the show is just beautiful. Like it looks a lot like the visual novel, so the style is pretty much the same. But the animation is just like so smooth and so well done and like detailed. Like the fights, like I said, just it looks so good. But yeah, those
are two
check it
very
out.
different shows.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
different. I like to mix it up.
Yeah, diversify. There you go.
Yeah. Yay.
Is Fate's Day Night at all based on like Arthurian legend, or is it just like very loosely connected?
It has some in it. I mean, it's kind of the warriors they summon are heroes from the past. So you don't like a big part of the story is also figuring out the name of the hero because the way that person can be defeated links to their past.
Oh, I see.
So
That's kind of cool.
they hide their names and stuff, and like you can kind of figure it out from subtle hints of like their attacks or how they act. And each warrior you summon is like a different type. So there's like an archer, there's like a magician mage kind of person. She's a witch in this one, and like tons of different classes. So it's really cool, and it links through all sorts of history and like Greek
Oh, neat.
mythology and other things too. So
Sounds right.
Sounds
Yeah.
totally up my
sounds
alley.
very awesome.
check it out. Yay! So what are you guys watching?
Elena, what are
Megan?
you watching?
Oh man, I was really bad this week. I got
wow.
super busy, and I only was able to catch up on or watch the next episode of Arslan. So Arslan Senki.
So you're on episode 3 now.
Yeah. So I
No
finished.
spoilers. I'm on. I just watched episode 2 this
Okay.
morning.
All right. Let's see if I can talk about this without talking about this. What did you think of episode 2?
I gotta tell you, I have a little bit of a issue with the pacing of the show so far. Like the first half is super slow of an episode, and then it gets really going in the second half. So for the second episode, I really enjoyed the fight scenes. I thought the art direction was great. There was some great parts of the battle where you see horses stepping on people and people falling off cliffs and fire, and it's super crazy. But the first part of it was so boring, where it was just like, oh, something happened. I'm not really digging the pacing for the first half of these episodes. But once
Yeah.
it sort of gets going, I'm hoping by the third episode it's gonna click a little more.
Should I lie to you?
Well, you can. I don't know if you should.
So it's funny that you talked about pacing because that's exactly what I was going to mention after having watched this third episode. Because I think it took me longer to get to that point of feeling impatient. I feel like so far they've adopted this model where they're just like dripping out bits of story with each episode.
Yeah.
And it's actually really frustrating where I start to feel like there's no point in me watching this like as they air. Like it feels like one of those series that it's better watched if you can just basically
Sort of binge watch it.
binge
basically.
watch it all at once, because the story gets so stretched out over these episodes where the pacing is such that they set up all this kind of like drama, and it's not even exposition. It's just more like, here are these characters talking in the first, I don't know, 12 to like even 17 minutes of a
Yeah.
24-minute episode.
Yeah, literally half of it is
Yeah.
people slowly talk. They've already established that the parents are sort of cold and distant and this, and they have little interesting tidbits of what's going on, but I know it was originally an OVA back in the like 90s, so maybe it's one of those things that they're stretching it out to make it 26 episodes, but
Maybe.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden in the last like 7 minutes, they just go boom, 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 and they bring out this new, like not necessarily twist, but like this new element, and then they just like end it. So it's like kind of cliffhanger-y
Yeah, they
each
did the same
time.
thing with the second episode where it was
Yeah.
kind of a cliffhanger, but not enough for me necessarily like, oh my gosh, I have to know what
Yeah,
happens.
it's just annoying.
It's not like a Game of Thrones
That's kinda how
cliffhanger where
the-
you're like, oh my gosh, don't stop there.
That's kind of the
yeah.
first episode was too. Like I just watched the first episode of that, and I was just like, meh.
It's actually
it's okay.
irritating. So it's like one of those series where I think I may end up hate watching it.
Oh no.
You're going to stick with it
Yeah.
only because, but.
It's interesting you brought up the sort of binge watching thing because that's like I watched the first season of Daredevil on Netflix, and without going into spoilers, like the show has some like real pacing problems. Like I liked it, but like there are pacing problems that I immediately forgave because I could just go to the next episode and watch it. Whereas like if I had to wait a week in between each one, like,
It
I
would
know a lot-
dampen your enthusiasm.
Yeah, totally. Like I feel like Lost was the same way too, where it had some pacing problems. But if you were late to the party and just watched all 6 seasons, you could totally forgive it and just go on to the next episode. Whereas if you had to wait 3 weeks in between episodes, you're like, well, that was a waste of 40 minutes. Yeah.
Right. I think there's a lot of anime that has, or one of my biggest issues with anime sometimes is pacing issues. Attack on Titan had that super severe
Yeah,
towards the end. One show that I really love, like one of my favorite shows, Yurikuma Arashi, the first episode just doesn't make sense. And so say if you waited to watch it and you had like 3 or 4 shows to watch, and then you come back to it, and I watched maybe like the first 2 episodes back to back, then it starts making more sense, and like having that ability to binge watch a little bit more, is a little bit more forgiving for the show too.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is better to wait to watch certain shows, and it's kind of annoying that that's kind of like a mentality we've developed.
Yeah.
Like you have to wait. It's like, oh, well, I can't just watch this one episode. I have to watch like
Yeah, it's even
5.
worse with like 56 episode,
Yeah,
series
yeah.
where they have to have all that filler to sort of stretch out the story. And you're like, oh, stop. I don't
Yeah.
care about the next monster of the week. Just get going.
Yeah, I mean, it's also tough too if shows are designed around sort of requiring the viewer to remember callbacks in previous episodes. Like I have a really bad memory, and I consume a lot of media, and so like I'll watch Game of Thrones and be like, what is this a reference to? And it's something last season that I totally watched last season. But I'm like,
Right.
I've watched 100. I've read 100 books and played 100 games and watched 100 movies since then, and sort of just that detail slipped my mind. Whereas if I was just doing what I did with Daredevil, like I remembered every detail because I watched it in a weekend.
Yeah, they do have little previews. Like Game of Thrones had that
Yeah.
the little preview at the beginning.
Yeah,
last
it does a
time,
quick
but
job
it's
of like,
been-
all of these were the important things you need to remember for this episode.
Right,
you
but
know?
it's like, yeah, but that last season ended, 9-10 months ago
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least, and so how am I supposed to remember all the little
Exactly.
details?
Yeah, totally.
So do you guys think it's kind of better to binge watch shows as opposed to
I think it depends on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the
Like-
context of the
Like I
show.
think even within like the realm of binge watching, there's like different tiers where there's like some series where their pacing isn't as bad. You could actually just watch like 2 or 3 at a time, and it's like it hits a spot. You're not like committed to like a whole day's worth of watching. For Arslan specifically, I think it's one of those where you would probably want to watch it all 26 at once. Or like at least like big chunks like 13 and
Yeah,
13
yeah.
because the
Right.
pacing is just so like drip a little bit of plot each time that if you're the kind of person that thrives on that, you're gonna go crazy.
Yeah, and I don't mind dialogue in these things, but it has to be engaging dialogue. And I feel like in Arslan, you're like, I get it. I know. You're worried that the prince isn't up to snuff when it comes to battle, and this person seems sort of sketchy and blah, but they don't say anything significant enough that it's engaging dialogue. And I
So-
think that's my problem.
there is a show that I know that I could not binge watch. Maybe you guys have ever experienced this too, but like super emotion heavy shows. They're like
Oh.
heart wrenching. Like
No, I couldn't do
Yeah.
it with Attack on Titan. I absolutely could not sit there and watch several episodes in a row because, like, just the first episode alone, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I watched this one anime called Your Lie in April, which just finished last season. I'm not done with it, and because I got really behind, and it's a very emotionally taxing show. Like one episode, I was just like crying, and I was like, "Don't look at me! Don't look at me!" It's like I'm not crying.
What's it about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about this boy who plays piano, and he stops playing piano after his mother dies. His mother was kind of abusive. Like she trained him. She wanted him to be the very best like pianist. And her abuse kind of started kicking in when she was found out she was like terminally ill, and it got harder and harder for him to cope with it. And then she just, you know, was really mean and stuff. And you get to kind of learn more about that later. And so he stops playing piano, and this girl comes into his life who is a musician as well. She plays violin, and she kind of gets him back into playing piano. And it's kind of about them developing a relationship and him getting over his mother's death and kind of accepting why things happened the way they did and loving the piano again. And there's like a big romance element too. And there's like young, and he has like a good friend who also likes him. You know, of course, that kind of thing kicks in. And it's just done so well. And people are like, "Have you watched it?" I'm like, "I'm not done. I just like cannot watch more than 2 episodes at a time."
Yep, totally.
I'm just like, "No, I'm done for today."
Yeah. No,
I have
I'm
to
with
have a
that. Yeah,
break.
anything that I'm super emotionally invested in, I generally try to pad them out, like put time in between them just so I can think about each episode. So I was that way with like Breaking Bad, and I'm that way with Black Mirror. Like Black Mirror is a little different because each episode is its own like thing, its own story, and so I like watching it and then having a couple days to digest that.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, there's other things like I'm like, yeah, I can totally. You know, Game of Thrones to me is like perfect for just like watching an entire season. But then you miss out on the. I don't know if a lot of anime has that, but like a lot of those big shows have those, you know, as dumb as it is, those water cooler things where everyone comes in after a night and we talk about it. Whereas if like with Daredevil, we all came in that weekend and we're like, hey, this is the show. It was cool, but we didn't have that sort of 10-week like, you know, sort of like sermon where every morning we would come in and talk about the episode.
And we weren't on the same page. Like I'm only on episode 7 of Daredevil, and like everyone else has seen it, and they're already like they're not spoiling it, but they're already giving their opinions about the beginning, middle, and end. You're like,
When you binge something too, it's also more difficult to discuss it because you've just ingested so much content that you're like,
you're not. Yeah.
Remember that one time? Wait. Yes, I remember that one time.
I guess I remember that one time in episode 4 where I was super exhausted and still watching it.
Yeah. Yay, binge watching.
Yay, binge. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. It's good for certain shows. So just let's maybe Arslan is one of those shows.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Hate watch 2015.
That's your
Hashtag.
Yeah.
So what do you been watching, Megan?
So I went on vacation a little bit, so I'm a little behind as well. But I did manage to see the first episode of Ori Monogatari, My Love Story, which was surprisingly cute. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, but it's really cute. It kind of hits a little close to home. I think we've all had that experience where we really like somebody, but they like our friend, and then you find out later the person you didn't think likes you, and it's just this whole little cute like love triangle. But I love that Takeo looks like this 7-foot gorilla who works for the mob, like the Yakuza or something. But he's super, super sweet and nice and friendly, you know, but his super cute, pretty boy friend Makoto is the one who always gets the girls. And it just happens over and over and over again where Takeo likes a girl, but she likes Makoto, who is sort of this very cynical best friend. You know, they're not even sure why they're friends. Their moms happen to be friends.
Yeah, they live by each other.
They live by each other.
Friends.
Yeah.
And so it's a super cute dynamic where Takeo, you know, saves this girl on a train from being groped, which is someone who worked and studied and lived in Japan, is a very common occurrence, and it's a little bit.
I just saw that they have no group stickers now. Like it's just so
Wait,
crazy.
Stickers?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
where do
they
you
even
put
have
them?
separate trains for women now because women are just fed up with it. Where they, yeah, it's
ridiculous.
really
It's
it's a social issue in Japan, and so Takeo saves this girl from some skeevy perv like feeling her up, and she just becomes so, you know, happy and ingratiated to him. But it's really just about this cute little love triangle. Although I have to say that this is one of those slice of life things where I think some of the manga doesn't translate well into the show. So like Makoto has a lot of silent thoughts that sort of flash above his head. That works really well in manga form. It's funny, but it's a little weird, you know, when you have these silent pauses by Makoto because he's thinking, you know, good luck or whatever. It doesn't quite translate for me, but that's my one tiny nitpick. Otherwise, I love the art direction. I love the story. The characters are absolutely adorable.
So that's one of the few shows that we actually do, or with at least my friends that I talk about with anime on a regular basis, that we just sit down and like, oh, did you see this part? It was so cute.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Oh,
what we do.
I like that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Super adorable. I also did Arslan, and basically we'll get to it later, but the second episode of Bebop. So that was my anime binge.
So I watch a lot of anime now, but we've had quite a few questions about people asking where we started watching anime. I'm actually interested for you, Marty, because
Yeah.
you don't watch a ton of anime. Again,
No.
coming back to you.
Yeah, I did. I watched a lot of anime, probably middle school, maybe early 2000s. And as I mentioned before, I think Toonami was the thing that really got me into it. Like I grew up obviously like a big fan of video games and sort of Japanese culture and everything. But it was hard to come by in the 90s. Like you could get your VHS tapes from like Suncoast or whatever.
Yeah,
weird
we were
mall
totally
video store.
talking about that last
Yeah,
week.
they're like $30 for 2 episodes. So it was one of those
super expensive.
things. Yeah, it was one of those things like I admired from a distance, but really, this is pre-internet. Like I couldn't just steal everything. But then Cartoon Network and Toonami and that weird robot dude, who I think he was voiced by Stephen Blum, who voices Spike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can totally hear it. It's
Yeah.
just weird when you're like, Toonami, then...
And then you're like, oh, little robot dude.
you're
It's
in the show,
Spike.
too.
Yeah, then that came around, and stuff like I don't know, just like the usual entry level stuff of like Dragon Ball Z and Gundam Wing and Sailor Moon, and then getting into like weirder stuff like Tenchi Muyo I liked a lot, and sort of just anything they would put on, like I would watch and I would love it, and it was one of those. It became that like routine, that after school routine. I would get home, and then from like 3:30 to 5, I would watch whatever they put in front of me. And there was like a couple year span where they just kept hitting with really cool things. And then eventually, getting it, like when I did get the ability to download things on the internet, like I found Evangelion and watched all those subbed and started to get into weirder movies like Beautiful Dreamer and from there, and then just the natural progression of like the Miyazaki movies and everything. And then falling out of it just a little bit. I've talked about this in other podcasts. Like you just have a finite amount of time in your life and space for things to consume. And at a certain point, it was like, well, something has to go to the wayside. And it was like, now I'm really interested in music. And then I stopped playing games a lot, and I just started being interested in music. And then I got this job, and I'm like, well, music, you have to go to the wayside because now I have to, watch games again or play games again. So it's one of those things where I don't have enough time for it. Like I want time for it, and I think the best like working with people like you is being like, I can go to you to be like, I have very little time. What do I watch? And I feel like that's like the perfect. I watch 30 things, but here's the one thing that you should watch that you're going to appreciate.
Right. So like one of the best things about modern anime is that a lot of them tend to be really short. So that's kind of like the best thing. Whereas when we started watching anime, it was not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
No, and there's still some that are going and going and going. So that hasn't exactly stopped either.
I'm probably one of the younger people in the office, and I remember when One Piece and Naruto started. I was like super young, and I don't remember how old I was. I remember seeing them air, and I was just like, One Piece looks dumb. Like, his arms are so weird, like noodles. I don't want that. And so then I started watching Naruto instead. But that was definitely on my entry point. But also Toonami was a big thing for me growing up. I remember coming home watching Sailor Moon. It was like the best thing. I used to like go to my friend's house. We're like, let's play Sailor Moon. Let's play. I was like Sailor Mars. So that was like my thing, like a young kid obsession. And Tenchi Muyo was something I watched. I remember getting up super late and watching Inuyasha on Adult Swim. And my parents were like, don't stay up late. But I had a TV in my room, so I was like,
you're not gonna know.
Whatever. You're asleep already. Sorry, parents.
It all comes out now.
Yeah. They watch sometimes, so they make fun of me. And I remember watching Cardcaptor Sakura. That was a big thing for me. I actually had the cloud cards, and I brought them to school, and I had like the wand, so I just like run around with them. And I have like and also people don't think about it, but like Pokemon and Digimon.
Huge. Yeah,
it's
totally.
Like, that's anime.
Yeah.
Also, in elementary school, I would be playing with my friends. Like, let's play Digimon. It's like you just like pretend like you're a Digimon and run around. I was like, but I want to be Pikachu, and they're like, that's okay, you can be Pikachu. So,
my favorite Digimon. Yeah, people who discount stuff like Pokemon and Digimon, I always think are doing themselves a disservice. It's like people who discount like the sort of reach and power of something like Angry Birds or Cookie Crunch, what's it? Cookie Cruncher?
Candy Crush?
Candy Crush, yeah. Whatever that. I like how like people who discount whatever the hell it's called. But it's one of those things where it's like does such a great job of like bringing people into this cool medium, and it's like don't be so hardcore where you're like that's not real. I'm like no, it's like has this wide reach. It's awesome.
Let it be an entry point.
Yeah, totally.
Like that's probably one of the best things that Toonami did do. I just had anime all the time. And
it had that wide range of like, well, this is like where we bring you in when you're younger, and this is sort of more mature stuff that you might enjoy as you're growing up.
Right. So where'd you guys start?
Well, I in the olden days.
Yeah, I was actually kind of
before
thinking this.
Toonami
I was kind of thinking the
and all
same. We're
that
like,
stuff.
well, we're talking about age.
Yeah, now I'm feeling a little old. But no, my entry point was, no surprise, Sailor Moon, because I think we touched on this a little bit last time. There isn't anything like anime in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason in high school, I only had like 5 classes during one semester. I don't know how I pulled that off, but I got home at like 2 p.m. every day, every school day.
Cool.
And so I remember, because I'm a huge General Hospital fan, even to this day, but General Hospital was going through a slump, couldn't find anything on TV, was bored out of my mind, probably should have been doing my homework, but nah. And I was flipping channels one day, and I came across a cartoon where there was this little girl with pink spiky hair, spiky ponytails, and a floating mechanical cat head running around, screaming and shouting. And I was like, what the hell is this? And it was the last sort of part of Sailor Moon R, and they only translated the first half of the story arc for that one, but it was Rini. It was Rini, not Chibiusa. It was Rini. And that's how I got into Sailor Moon, was because weird stuff was happening and I had to know what was going on. And it maybe took me 6 episodes to finally figure out what Sailor Moon was about. And then what happened was, because there was only 1.5 seasons translated into English by Deke, I finally caught it from the beginning. And ever since, I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And my best friend in high school was like, oh, I have a bunch of other anime stuff you can watch. So we were both huge fans of Sailor Moon. Slayers is probably my favorite of all time. That's the thing that's sort of like, if Sailor Moon was my entry point, then Slayers was the reason I stuck around for so long. So, but yeah, it was literally serendipity of just flipping channels at home one day, bored out of my mind, and just watching Chibiusa run around with a floating cat head with her Luna P ball, and I was like, all right, I'm on board with this crazy show. So yeah, that was my entry point, was Sailor Moon, and then I was addicted to Slayers for years. So yeah, what about you?
Oh, well, okay, so it's kind of a weird story, I guess, in the fact that so when I was really little, like maybe 3 or 4, my mom's sister was subscribed to HBO, which back in the 80s was a really big deal.
Yeah.
Like, it was expensive. And so what she would do is just tape a bunch of stuff and give it to my mom so that my mom could basically use the TV as my babysitter.
Totally.
And it just so happened that, so this is weird because technically this is my entry point to anime, but I didn't know it at the time. So there was a dub that they did back in the 80s of Nausicaa, one of the Miyazaki films, and that somehow ended up on one of the tapes. And I watched that, and I remember being freaked out of my mind by it, because if you've watched Nausicaa, you know they have those, like, the omu, like, the really big, like, bugs, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And, like, when you're a tiny kid and you see this gigantic bug on screen, or at least for me, I freaked out.
Totally.
So my first entry point was not, I guess, a very comfortable experience,
Yeah.
because I just was freaking out. And then fast forward, not super long later, like, then I started watching Sailor Moon. And so that's, like, I guess my first conscious entry into the scene. And like you, it was very much like, what is going on here? Because I had grown up with American cartoons. So I was used to pacing like Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, Gargoyles.
Gotta give a shout out to TMNT.
Yeah. Yes, that too.
And Gem. I was an 80s kid, you can tell.
And then, gosh, what else? So much stuff. X-Men.
Batman the animated series.
Yeah.
It's all I
Oh,
need.
Batman.
all
Oh,
I
my
need.
God.
Yeah.
That could be an entire episode of this show right now. It's just us talking about how awesome that show was.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
good.
just,
The non-anime club
It's
episode.
fine.
yeah. But it was just, like Sailor Moon, the dub too, was like just so different. It was just like the dub wasn't really super great, honestly, and like as you said, like just weird stuff was happening. So
I
I
changed a lot of
watched.
voice actors too.
Yeah, they kept changing the voice of Tuxedo Mask. Like 3 or 4 times they did the same thing with Sailor Moon. Like the first 5 or 6 episodes was one actress, and then most of the time was another, and then they had another, and it was like, man, what is going on with that show?
You were out.
Yeah.
You might want to write down when that swear was.
Yeah.
Whoops. It's what you guys do on Beyond, right? Like you have an entire
Yeah,
list of
and it gets really
swears.
long, and then Altano starts doing it on purpose whenever we get into an argument, and he gets mad at me because I have to write down all the swears, and so he'll just start swearing on purpose and just laughing at me as I'm writing everything down.
That's evil.
Yep,
That's really mean.
yep.
I'm not gonna lie, that's hilarious.
Hilariously mean. So So yeah, and then from there, that was kind of like my gateway drug, I guess, right? So then I was like, okay, what else is out there? And so my school had an anime club, and like they put on like Bubblegum Crisis and Tenchi Muyo, like Megami-sama, which is Oh My Goddess, and a bunch of stuff, like all 90s stuff. And then from there, I would just use like all my time on the internet to see what else I could find. So I would find like random episodes here and there. And then that got me into Hanyori Dango eventually, Kodomo no Mocha, which is a child's toy. And then from there, like it was weird, like I progressed through all these like series. And then one day I was just like, wonder what else is out there. And then I got into like live action, like dramas. And then, so that kind of transitioned, and I didn't actually go back to anime for a really long time. So this is like me like reviving it in a way.
Yeah, same
awesome.
here. I actually evolved sort of in the same way, where it was like it was all anime, and then it was J dramas, and then it was Taiga dramas, and then it was. Now I have TV Japan at home, and it's mostly like traveling shows and cooking shows because I'm old apparently, and so. But I love.
Food is awesome.
Yeah, it's. But there are certain things where they will play anime, like Case Closed plays all the time on TV Japan, and like Lupin plays on TV Japan. So I can still get my anime in, but it's amazing how like the stuff that I used to not like as a teenager, like who wants to watch a boring cooking or traveling show? Now I'm like, oh my gosh, they have a whole show about going around the world and filming the daily lives of cats around the world. It's awesome.
We've become boring people.
We have become boring people. It'll
Our
happen
teenage
to
selves would not enjoy
you
us.
one day too.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like our teenage selves would be okay with the fact that we were getting paid to sit here and talk about anime.
That's true.
Yeah.
Give
That's
high
very-
fives to the time spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
My
lucky.
parents never saw this coming. My mom couldn't even get Sailor Moon right. She'd always call it, "Oh, you're gonna watch Super Sailor Purple Crystal?"
That's what it should
What,
be
Mom?
called.
Yeah, it's the better show. But
Yeah.
I was like, no, Ma, it's called Sailor Moon.
Yeah. Also, I hate to be that curmudgeon, but kids have it so much better these days. It's so much easier. You don't know what it was like.
You
You
just, like, record
seriously.
everything.
just
Yeah.
record everything.
Or
It's
just
just on the
find it
internet.
on-
Everything's on the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah, we talked about this
We
last
totally
week.
talked
Yeah.
about this last week with Max, where we were just outlining what like how bleak life was for anime and manga fans back in like the 90s, even
Yeah.
like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Where like when I ended up moving back to the Bay Area, and somebody told me about one manga when that was still around and hadn't been shut down due to like gross copyright violations, where they're like, yeah, there's all these scanlations online for manga, like you just go there and you can read it, it's all translated. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
go to shady shops to get like bootleg Japanese
Totally.
tapes of, VHS tapes of
Yeah.
shows. Man, those are the days.
Y'all got Google.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger and I could just get on this like one website, of course, super big copyright issues, and they just had all the anime like sub-translated, and so I just watched there because I mean I didn't have like super awesome cable that could get all the other channels that had
And there was
some anime.
no way to, like, Crunchyroll didn't exist. Like, these things didn't
Right.
exist to
No,
where you
Crunchyroll
could pay
came
for it.
around like in 2005 or 2006,
Yeah.
and it was streaming stuff that wasn't entirely legal until they started doing legal stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think they used to have like all of Sailor Moon.
Oh, wow. Then they went legit.
Yeah, and I remember I used to watch those things, and then I just in like middle school and early high school, and then I just like stopped watching anime. Like I kind of had the same thing as you. You just kind of you get out of it. You have other interests.
Totally. Yeah.
I forget. I was like getting super into school at that time. Like I was like, okay, I gotta do all these AP tests and get ready for college and want to get out early. So
God,
definitely,
AP tests.
yeah,
Forgot about those.
those
I
things.
blocked them from my
Yeah.
memory.
But yeah, I totally just fell out with anime. It's not that I didn't like it. It's just didn't have time, and so I
Yeah.
missed like a whole ton of awesome shows. So what do you do to get back into it? Because like, obviously, it sounds like we've all kind of had our own falling out. But where did you guys fall out? Because you guys have obviously watched a lot longer. Like what happened?
Like
And
why?
how did we get back?
Or
Yeah.
how did I get back? Oh, geez. So how I fell off the bandwagon, I guess you could say, was just that life stuff came up where I just started wanting to do other things, like pretty much what Marty said. And then I actually ended up working for Viz Media for a couple of years.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
So, by
fancy.
the way, disclaimer: anything I say is my own opinion and has nothing to do with that company. I do have to say that. Legal disclaimer. But it was funny because I was there, so I think I don't even know. It's been like a while since I've worked there, but at the time they had their own like production team and they were doing their own translations and like selling like translations of anime. But while I was there, it got me at least back more into the manga side of things. So I was just reading a bunch of stuff because I was working on Shonen Jump and also Shoujo Beat when it was still around.
Aww.
wow.
I know,
So
let's
sad.
pour one out for Shoujo Beat. So sad. I was there when they also closed it, and I moved full time over to Shonen Jump.
Oh
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, I was working
Sad
on
corner.
both at the
I
time.
still love shoujo.
I know. But that's, I think, largely the influence of how I ended up kind of switching over from having like super deep taste in like shoujo stuff into like more like shonen because I was just surrounded by it so much. But then after I left that, like it kind of dropped off again. And so I haven't really kept up to date. And then like you came and you're like, I love anime. And I was like, that's awesome. And like Marty was saying earlier, it is really nice to have someone just tell you, go watch these things. You probably will enjoy them. Or at least you'll have a strong opinion about them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So as opposed to me having to spend hours and hours on the internet, like when I was younger, just
Yeah.
looking for something new.
Yeah.
So-
I know. I mean, a lot of us are even that way towards, like, I have a lot of friends who play games but aren't entrenched in the industry like we are. And so they'll be like, hey, what should I play this fall? And I'll be like, oh, you could skip these 3, but you should definitely check this out. I think you'll like it. And it's great because, like, it's nice to have that person you can look to. So I think that's an important part of getting back in is if you have, much less free time, is using it more wisely.
So one of the awesome things is that I've seen a lot of people in all of our anime features, because I've written a good chunk of the ones that are on the site from now. Like, I'm the one who usually writes them, and I always like to check out the comments. I mean, that's always really important to me.
Yeah.
And the best thing is that a lot of people post the same thing. It's like, I haven't been in an anime in a while.
Yeah.
What do I watch? And everyone always, if you're asking that, please, 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 say what kind of genres you like.
Yeah, that's
Because it's
the-
like,
yeah.
what do you like? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
It's like saying, I
tons
like
of shows.
food. What should I eat?
Yeah.
The number
It's like, well, do you
one
like spicy
question I
things?
always get during my Sailor Moon Crystal reviews is, why don't you review more anime? We love anime. And so that's the wonderful thing about this club, is that it actually fulfills that need, and it's a great place for us to get together with fans and talk about something that we love.
Totally.
Because it takes a lot of time and resources to review all the anime
yeah.
out there. So, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
There's no way we can cover everything, but it's nice to have this sort of outlet. where
Right.
We can touch upon as many things as we can.
Yeah, and like I said, our comment's actually pretty good. So if you're like looking for new shows or you don't know where to start again, that's always really great. Also, a good thing is just to like go to like my anime list and just look at through genres and new stuff and just kind of read like synopses.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
it's hard because obviously searching on your own, like you guys said, there's just so much out
Yeah.
there.
But it's so much easier
Um,
still now.
yeah,
Because
I-
before you actually would have to like Google like specific like terms, and then you have to go out to these like forums and fan sites and like start calling from them. But like here, you just go to one site and like everything's kind of collated.
Yeah, and one thing that actually got me back into anime was in college. I wanted to rewatch all of Sailor Moon. I was just like, I didn't finish it because I could only get so far when I was young, because the dub only went so far, and then a lot of the Sailor Moon mirrors and stuff got taken down. Like there was no way to legally watch it unless I wanted to import stuff, and it was just like, or get a VHS player. So I was like,
Yeah.
So I ended up finding them all online, and I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
And so from there, I just kind of went based off of recommendations from friends. And of course, you can always look what's similar to Sailor Moon, or like what's similar to whatever last show you really loved.
Yeah.
So that's also just like a great way to get back into anime.
Yeah. And like you said, narrowing it down to like what genres do you like is the important thing, because
Yeah.
you can't just be like, what game do I play? It's like, well, I have no idea what games you like. There's no one likes everything.
Right.
So narrowing it down and saying which shows are your favorites, like that's an easy way to say, well, you might enjoy X, Y, and Z.
Yep. And Crunchyroll and Funimation have like their genres pretty set out well, and they each have their own rating systems. So you can of course read comments and reviews from other people there too.
Totally.
So it makes it a lot easier. But
That's awesome.
yeah. Yay, anime.
Yay, anime.
That's what we
Anime.
say at the end of a topic. It's just like, cool. Now on to our next thing. So obviously we've all watched kind of a bit. I mean, even Marty, you've seen quite a bit when you're a little younger.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite shows? We had a lot of questions on that. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
what are your favorites? So that's always
I have-
difficult to choose.
Luckily, obviously, Cowboy Bebop, I think is, if not my number one, it's my number two or my number three. That's the show that when people, it's the only show I think I've recommended to people who, quote unquote, don't watch anime. Because I'm saying just like as a thing, as a stylish piece of art, it's something that totally should be consumed. I mean, its influences spread to Firefly and to, so many games, and it does this, it handles the idea of cool in a way that like very few, I mean, not only anime, but just very few like fictional works have done. Like it captures the spirit of jazz music and old kung fu movies, and that weird anachronism between the futuristic majesty of space with the sort of grimy underbelly of urban life so well, and obviously we'll talk about that more later on when we talk about the first 2 episodes. And then aside from that, Evangelion is one of those shows that as however old I was, it was like one of those things that just racked my mind. Like I go back and watch it now, and I'm like, a lot of this just doesn't make sense.
It's still
no,
it just
totally.
doesn't. It's weird.
And they're fixing a lot of that now with the movies.
Yeah, they've redone them. I haven't had a chance to watch them.
Yeah, I think I've seen the first 3. I think there was only 3 in America.
I think there's only 3 out right now. Like there's the original old movie, and then there's the 3 new ones. I think there's a fourth maybe?
One in the works.
In the works?
Yeah. That was a show that I loved just as a kid who loved like weird things that just toyed with your mind and emotions. That was up there. Fooly Cooly. I'm a big fan of brevity, and so if the fact that they in 6 episodes they were able to introduce this world, tell this story, make us fall in love with these characters, and leave. I'm like, holy crap! Like you can do this, and I mean, so it's 6 episodes, so it's like less than 2 hours, and they're able to do this amazing thing. The Big O was a show I really loved, which it was American.
Oh gosh,
right?
I've been so long since I've heard of that.
Yeah, did you guys ever watch that?
No.
I saw the first episode. I think first, second episode. It's weird.
It is weird. So it's
super
like
weird, but it has that
Batman
noir kind of feel.
Yeah, it's like a Batman noir, but he has a giant. It's like if Bruce Wayne, instead of putting on a costume, had a giant mech. And so
that's cool too.
Yeah, it's super, and it's like the city is really cool. It feels a little bit like the movie Dark City, but it's this really lonely rich guy who, protects his city at night from giant monsters by getting in his mech. But the main character is really cool. The mysteries get weird. Like I like the main character is just this super sad dude.
Why is he sad?
If you have too much money, you get sad. I don't know why he's sad. He's got a ton of money. He's handsome, and I'm like, just go. And you got a big robot. Don't
Bruce
be sad.
Wayne's pretty sad.
Yeah, I guess
It's pretty dark.
That's pretty dark. His robot's his only friend. And then there was a show I watched in college because I took one of my senior theses was in a class on angels in pop culture, and it was a show called Haibane Renmai. Have you guys heard of this?
Nope.
It's loosely based off one of my favorite books of all time, which is Haruki Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. And it's this sort of place that when people die, they go to this like village in this grove, and they don't really remember their past lives, but they all have angel wings. And the village is sort of like it's circled by this wall, and no one knows what happens on the other side of the wall. And finally,
Titans.
Yes, Titans, giant naked Titans. And the show, which is short, is sort of about like the one person who's born and like finally has the sort of the gumption and the curiosity to be like, well, let's go see what's beyond that wall. And it trails off a little bit at the end, but it has this really great air of like place and mystery that I like a lot.
Cool.
So, yes, those are my 5.
So great.
I did it. I didn't cry.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Did you like the end of Ava?
The original or the other ending?
Yeah, I liked the other ending better. Like the end of
The film?
The actual film, the end of Evangelion. Yeah, I liked that better than the original ending. I mean, that's a thing where, like, that's a prime example of an author with no checks and balances. Like, no one's saying no. It's like M. Night Shyamalan or George Lucas, where it's like at a certain point you probably need a naysaying voice to give you a little bit of guidance. But I just like how absolutely off the rails and insane it got.
Yeah.
And it's like no other fictional work can get that insane. And so I appreciated it, I think, more than I liked it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The first one was just really confusing for me. Like, I'm pretty sure we'll have an entire talk on just Ava, like, sometime.
Yeah,
we have
totally.
to. It's totally worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, that show. It's wrecking my brain right now just to think about it.
Just stop thinking about it. So for my favorites, it's really difficult because I've watched like a ton of anime. There's a lot that I really cherish and love. But I'm just going to list mine off, and I'll talk about any that we haven't discussed before. So Kill la Kill is easily my number one. Like, I saw it. I watched it with friends. Like, me and my friends Skyped in together and watched the last episode.
That's so cool.
It was great. It was a perfect ending. Like, I loved the entire premise. If you guys don't know what it is, you should. But
okay,
I know what it is.
You're just leaving it at that. It's a mystery.
So it's kind of a parody on shonen fighting and like just that over the top action and like kind of teases at fan service as well. Like one of the ultimate forms for the two main girls is they're practically naked. And so it's just like kind of making fun of that, but it also does it in a very tactful way. Like at first it seems like it was a little off-putting to me because like, whoa, this is like a little much. And then I was just like, no, I really like this. This is good. So the main premise is that this girl is enrolling in a new school. She's transferring to find out who murdered her father. And her only clues is that the head of the student council might know what's going on. So she just kind of has to fight her way. The school sounds kind of like normal, but then the kids in the school, like the higher class kids in the school and the student council all have special uniforms that give them magical powers. So like the club heads all have them. Like there's the tennis club head, and she has a uniform that lets her swing tennis balls at like crazy speeds that could like kill people. And it's just like over the top and super hilarious. And it's just the best. So
it's pretty short too, right?
Yeah, like I said, it's like 24 episodes. I think I said 26 earlier, but it's always I think it's 24. I wish it was 26, but there's an OVA. There's an OVA. But,
in your dreams.
Yeah, that's fine. And of course, Sailor Moon is very, very good, very fond in my memories, especially the end. Sailor Stars is amazing.
Yeah, nostalgia plays a strong role in like when choosing favorites.
Yeah, and it's easy. That I really appreciate that I watched it all again in college, because like you realize like the more like bad episodes, like you realize how some of it was actually kind of bad.
Yeah, totally.
But then how it ended so well. Like it's Sailor Stars. I said if you haven't seen that and you liked Sailor Moon at all, it was so good and so well written. Then Yuri Kumo Arashi, I've talked about it before. It's a Yuri, so it's like kind of lesbian stuff, which is really good. It's super tactful, high on imagery. I'm not going to go into it because it's really good. You should just look it up. I'll add it to the list so you guys can look at it. Like, we're kind of like getting on time. Shirobako, which is the anime about making anime, and it's amazing.
Oh, James was telling me about that.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that I also would just like easily recommend to anybody. It's very deep and kind of questions about your passions, and like it's very relatable too. It's these kids kind of talk about like why we want more characters that aren't in high school. They just graduate college, or I don't think it was high school. Something similar, and they're getting in the workforce. Like skips 3 years later, they're full into their jobs. Like what's happening with them and how that stress works. And also you get to see like kind of behind the scenes of anime. Of course, I'm pretty sure it's not like 1-to-1. Like this is exactly how anime is made. But of course, but it's like a nice insight too. And my last one is Code Geass. So that's like one of those shows that I watched during high school when I wasn't super into anime. But this is one that just like kind of caught my eye. It kind of has similar feels to Death Note. Where you can, like, the main protagonist can kind of control people's fates in a way through, like, magic stuff, but whatever. But it also has, like, a really awesome mech element. So that's kind of why I liked it. It's really well balanced between the action and, like, the story. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Guys.
Yeah. I think I already sort of mentioned the top two for me. So Sailor Moon was my gateway drug, but Slayers is the thing that I loved it so much. I love that the protagonist, Lena Inverse, was, like, no other hero or heroine that I'd ever seen before. Instead of being this tall, statuesque, blonde bombshell, she's this teeny tiny pixie-sized, very short-tempered redhead who's flat-chested, and, she's called the Dragon Spooker because apparently she's ugly, although she's actually very cute. And, her sidekick is a dumb as bricks blonde named Gauri, and then you have the amazing voice cast, so Megumi Hayashibara is the voice of Lena Inverse. If you don't know her, she did almost every voice in anime in the 90s. And then there was Takehito Koyasu, who did the voice of Reizo, and he's done a bunch of stuff as well in different shows. I think it was recently in a show I watched a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was really good, great art direction. It's a parody of things like Record of Lodoss War, which I don't know if you guys saw back in the 90s, but it was an excellent medieval romp with, like elves and wizards and dwarves, and it was sort of like a Lord of the Rings type of anime, and Slayers kind of makes fun of that formula. So that was really awesome. Did anyone watch a show called Dragon Half?
Nope.
No.
It was only like 3 or 4 episodes long, but it was hysterically funny, and I highly recommend it. It's about this cute little redheaded dragon, and it's just, I don't know how to explain it. You have to watch it. It's just, it had me cracking up all the time. What else? Escaflowne was a big one. I loved
Escaflowne.
So good. So amazing.
But not the movie.
Not the movie.
Not the movie.
Not the movie. But, and then, what else? Sailor Moon, Slayers, Escaflowne, Dragon Half, and I mentioned it before, but Record of Lotus War was just really, really good.
Yeah.
If you like medieval sword and sorcery, I highly recommend watching that. So,
Nice.
yeah, those are my top 5.
So also going to do like a throwback to the 90s here. I cheated on some of mine, honestly.
Not cool.
I know. But I slipped in a movie in an OAV as opposed to just like a straight series.
That's fine.
So actually, I would say my number one, surprising me actually, is Kodomo no Mocha, which I mentioned earlier, which is usually colloquially referred to as Kodocha. It's actually an anime that's designed for like little kids. It's like geared for I think like grade 6, like 6th graders and maybe 7th graders, like really young. But I love it because it's just so energetic and peppy, and every time I watch it, I feel like I've just drunk like 3 cups of like espresso.
Yeah.
Because the main character, Sana, she's just so bouncy, full of energy, like running around like crazy, that it just kind of rubs off on me, I think, just watching it. Super cute. Like, you guys are talking about the whole like love triangle kind of thing. Well, it's actually even cuter to see it on a middle school level, because that's when they don't even know yet how to express the feelings they're starting to feel, right? So like one character kisses another and like they flip out because they're just like, what happened, right?
Yeah, you went from ew, icky girls and icky boys, and then to, oh, I actually am starting to like this person.
Or just like, just icky people in general. Why are you in my space, right? And it's seeing that kind of like very innocent take on the love triangle thing I think is just super cute. So yes, if you haven't watched it, I think you should. You will be very, very awake afterwards. Actually, that's one of the series I can't binge watch, is because I think I just don't have like the energy to keep up with it after like 4 or 5 episodes. Yeah. Escaflowne would be my second favorite, actually. It just is such a good blend of like action, a little bit of drama, like the mecha stuff, the fantasy stuff, because I love that it's set on a different world. I think I'm just a sucker for that kind of stuff. The thing is, though, is that if you watch Escaflowne and you're like, that was awesome, there's a movie, and then you watch the movie, like, those are 2 very different experiences, like, so different. I watched the movie, and afterwards I was like, life is so dark and depressing.
Yeah, it's really weird.
I think I'm just going to cry into a glass of beer now.
These shows are so different. Like, I didn't
I
like
don't
any
know.
of the Sailor Moon movies, really.
You didn't?
See, now I've made enemies.
No enemies. I'm just surprised.
No,
the
like,
music is so good in a lot of them.
No, I had all the Sailor Moon soundtracks. That's like a totally different topic we could go on and on about. I still have game and anime soundtracks in my car from years ago. But the movies themselves, like the Sailor Moon R movie, is like, what the hell is this about? Like, I don't know. But, that's just my opinion. It's all subjective. I understand. But I'm just saying the movies, nope.
So the weird thing about the anime movies, too, is that sometimes they can't be canon. Sometimes they have to make those one-off kind of like, this can't apply to the story that's happening. But it's an awesome way to have like another like one-off sort of overdone like film.
It's sort of tied in, I think, to Sailor Moon R a little bit in
Yeah.
terms of like type of characters. But yeah, it was definitely like a totally different. There was nothing about the Black Moon Clan. There was nothing about that. So, but it was just weird.
It was weird, but it was an enjoyable kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably go back and appreciate it more now because I'm not so attached
It's
to
true.
Sailor Moon the same way I was in high school, where I was very protective of my memories and how everything should have been laid out. And then I guess I was really upset at the time because the Black Moon Clan wasn't in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this? This isn't Sailor Moon R. And it was like, well, it can't be. So in that regard, I understand. I'm just saying it was a little weird.
Yeah. Well, I think I love that movie primarily because I loved Aino Senshi, which was like the main song that came out of that movie.
Right.
I drove my family up the wall, like playing it on loop for like hours at a time. I was that kid. I was that kid. But finishing out my list, Haniori Dango, which I also mentioned earlier. I really love that series because I think I watched it at a time when I felt like I was that teenager that felt like they didn't quite fit in. I had been bullied previously in life. So the series is about this girl who starts at this really prestigious academy. Like, it's a high school, and it's like, I think they call it an elevator school. It's like, which means that once you get in, like, you just go straight all the way through college. Like, you're done. Like, you don't have to worry about entrance exams or anything anymore, which in Japan is a big deal. And she's from a poor family, and she manages, I think, to get in like on a scholarship or something.
Yeah, she's like the only one on
Yeah.
scholarship.
And so because of that status, the other students single her out, basically, after, she crosses paths with this one group that rules the school, basically. And, for the whole time when she's there, she's thinking, okay, I'm going to put my head down. I'm not going to make a fuss or draw attention to myself. I just want to get through this and, get a good education and then go on to support my family. But it didn't happen that way. And you get to see, like, how plucky she is. And she's very feisty, and that's what I really appreciate about watching that show. I actually was kind of disappointed with how it veered into, like, the whole romance thing, but it's shoujo, so it's kind of expected.
Eventually, I was going to go there.
Yeah. And then rounding out my picks are Nasuka, which is a movie, a Miyazaki movie.
I knew we could have picked movies.
I know. I cheated. I totally cheated. Super cheated. And the Kenshin OAV. I don't actually like Rurouni Kenshin, like the anime series. I feel like it's too lighthearted, and because to me that juxtaposition is weird, where it's like I'm a total like badass with this sword, and I could kill you all without even thinking about it, but I'm really happy and peppy, and I'm like I don't understand. Like it's not my brain process of that. But the Kenshin OAV is about his backstory, and that's like very dark and dramatic, and I really actually enjoy it. It's like only 4 episodes, so it's like quick in and out.
Cool.
Very cool.
Okay, so with that done, we were going to talk about reader questions today, but we kind of are running out of time.
We
so
did a lot of babbling.
Sorry,
It was good babbling,
guys.
though.
Yeah. But thank you so much for all your suggestions on like anime and all your questions.
Yeah, so we will absolutely get to them sometime. Don't worry, keep sending them in. We have a doc compiled all of them. I try to go through the YouTube and IGN comments as much as I can. Of course, there's like
You go
hundreds.
to the YouTube comments?
I know the YouTube comments
She's
are
brave.
scary.
Brave.
She's
But there are
super
people-
brave.
There are people who care and have things to say, and so I care about you. And
That is,
I try.
you are.
She
No,
goes
she's
into the
awesome.
trenches. Yeah, I'm like,
She's
no, I
awesome.
avoid I don't want to hear about how ugly I am, YouTube. I
Thanks,
know.
YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
YouTube.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like there's some shining lights in there, and
You're
I'm
my
like,
heroes.
thank you.
Yeah. I needed this.
You're
Yeah.
made of tougher stuff than us.
So let's get to the watch party. The
Yeah.
important part.
Cowboy Bebop.
Yep.
Marty's
Cowboy
been waiting
Bebop.
the whole time. He's like, I'm ready.
Just
Cowboy
go,
Bebop.
let's
Let's
go.
talk.
I've been, my hand's been shaking.
Right,
God, I love
so-
the show so much. Everyone's seen it, right?
Well, I've only seen the first 2 episodes.
Yeah,
I'm trying
that's
to
what-
stay on rails
Whoa.
with the
Yeah,
anime
so-
watch party.
Yeah, this anime watch party, we're talking about the first 2 episodes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that was the assignment.
That's fine.
Everyone just
No
watched the first 2.
spoilers, Marty.
No spoilers.
So we watched Asteroid Blues and Stray Dog Strut, which are both fantastic and have completely different tones.
Yep.
Yeah, completely different
Yeah.
tones,
What
and
is
I love
happening?
the sly pop culture references, especially in the second episode,
Yeah.
where I'm like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it does. The show, I hadn't seen the show in a couple of years, and I forgot that it starts off on that very strange flashback /
Right,
flash
the kind
forward.
of
Yeah, I mean,
just-
you think it's a flashback, you don't know what it is.
What it
but
is
that
or
black
where-
and white moment with Spike in the rain and jazz music and the cigarettes and the dead roses and the gunfight. You're like, what the hell? So you think the show is going to be this, and then it's just like hard cut to that opening, which in my opinion is the
So
greatest opening in the history of
good.
television.
It's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our readers actually found his sheet music for jazz, Chris Daniel. You have a really long name, so I'm just going to say Chris Daniel. On Twitter,
Yeah.
said he found his own old sheet music for his sax.
Yeah.
So it's like awesome they did a sax
That's so
part.
cool.
I
Yeah.
actually played it in college.
Really?
Yeah, so we played Tank in college,
Ah,
which is
that's
like
the best.
awesome. We played
Yeah.
it for like a halftime show.
Nice.
Some marching
Cool.
band. Yeah,
Yeah.
so easily one of the greatest anime openings there is.
Oh,
So
totally.
good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, just in that moment, like sets, like that's the real tone of the show. I guess is that
Right.
opening sets it, or the actual the opening, the credits, and it does this. I mean, it just from the score, sort of like that twangy blues that permeates the entire show, to Spike and Jet's relationship, which is really strange, which obviously grows throughout the series. But I like the fact that it introduces the crew of the Bebop very slowly. I mean, without going too far in, they recruit a handful of other strange characters.
Which
to
you
their
see in like
family.
the opening.
Yeah, you
I
see in
mean,
the
yeah.
opening
opens
credit,
are-
but you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
see them in the first 2 episodes.
No.
You've got 2 guys and like a dog at the end. And
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
all right,
That
that's the
episode
entire
too.
show.
Fine.
Sorry.
Right. It's like, okay, cool. Fine.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah, super cute. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I love that weird like juxtaposition and anachronism between sort of the futuristic majesty of space and wormholes and warp drives, and then just when you get down to like when they go to the first episode takes place in Tijuana.
Yeah.
Like you get down there and it's just like, oh man, Tijuana, like it's just as awful as it is now. Like all these cities are just as
Even
awful.
the future,
as
it's grim.
Yeah, exactly. And like the bars are super sad and everything, and it's just I love that like. This show could take place right now if it weren't for the whole space travel thing. I don't know, and it just seems really timeless to me. Like it's always going to have that sense of cool in the same way that like Miles Davis is always going to have a sense of cool to him. Like no matter what fads come in and out, like this thing is sort of set in stone. I don't know what it is.
I would say for me when I was watching the first 2 episodes, so I'm going to incur a lot of wrath for this. So at the time when it was current, I had a bunch of friends tell me I should watch it, and then I don't remember the timing of this, but like Trigun was like popular around the same time. I always tended to mix those two up because like I would watch a couple of each, and then I would get really confused, like what was what.
They're both sort of westerns, yeah.
So going back and just like very clearly, consciously watching these first 2 episodes and being like, okay, I'll like fix this properly in my memory. I was so struck by how 90s anime felt. Like it was almost like, oh, I'm coming home, right? Like because the style of animation like changes in Japan over time, right? So like it has very much that 90s look. It's not quite as colorful as like what we're watching now. It doesn't have that kind of, because I feel like when I'm watching like something like Arslan or even looking at something like Plastic Memories, it's very pretty. You know, it's like brighter colors. Like the characters have like a more, I don't know, like kind of Bishonen kind of look.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I was like, oh, it's like coming home. But at the same time, like it's just so well paced.
Yeah.
It's the dialogue is so tight. Like the characterization is done so well. Like it has this very timeless quality. Like it's like going back and watching movies from like the 1950s, like the golden age of Hollywood kind of thing, where it doesn't matter that it's from a different time and different place with different inflections and, you know, vocabulary. There's something very universal about it.
Yeah.
The art direction is absolutely stunning in it. I mean, I love the different angles, especially during fight scenes. You get sort of that like up, you know, the camera's going up, or it's just at different positions and everything. And I wanted something adult and cool. I was talking about that the first Anime Club episode. I was like, I want something that's not in high school. I don't want something that's in middle school.
Yeah.
Boy, did I get that with Cowboy Bebop. I just love it's so much about adults, and it's so grounded in reality. So yeah, it has space travel, but it does. It's something about it is very adult and very mature, and I love that. And I love all the sly pop culture references. So like the second episode is basically a parody of Game of Death with Bruce Lee. Yeah. So I haven't seen the entire movie. I've only seen a couple of fight scenes from it, but it's a whole thing with like Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I can never say his name. And it's awesome. And so to have that kind of flashback, and as a kid or a younger person, I wouldn't have understood that reference. But as an adult, there's all these wonderful pop culture references that are super hip, but they're not banging it over your head. They're just sliding it in there in a really clever way, which I like.
And it marries the idea of like fun and comedic anime with like, I mean, the end of the first episode is like super tragic. Like he's following them into space, and like the girl blows her boyfriend's brains out, and then they just get torn apart by the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the biggest thing is like, you have the tone setting like in the beginning when you have the dark noir kind of jazzy theme when it's like big shootout. Yeah. And then the intro theme, it breaks that up. And then you have the other kind of like comedic, like he's trying to find their first bounty, like you said. It's like very tragic. And then the next episode is just completely silly.
Oh, totally.
Like episode 2 is just like, just a little fun. Like, oh, yeah, we're chasing after this dog.
They're chasing down a little Welsh corgi everywhere, and you're like, I don't know where this is going, but I'm completely on board with this.
So it introduces Big Shot, where it's like the super awkward host trying to be like old timey cowboys and saying shucks howdy.
It's really good.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I've seen this most of the series before. I actually started watching it back in December. I got through most of the way and decided to take a break because I had to get some other job stuff done. But overall, Bebop, just like even it shows in these first 2 episodes, just handles its tones very well. And sets them and kind of paces your emotions as well. Like obviously the first one's like very hard hitting and like whoa, but then the second one kind of like gives you a break. So it is nice.
And it does a really good job of introducing you to these characters and teaching you about the characters slowly. Like you know a lot about Spike right now, and you learn more about Jet soon, and then when they meet Faye and Ed, is that the
Spoilers.
There's a character named Faye and Ed. That's not super spoilers.
You've seen it. You saw them in the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. They're in the opening credits. And And then, I don't know. The show, it just, like, rewatching these 2 episodes reminded me of why I fell in love with it. You know?
Yeah. You know what I really like about the characters, too, is that Spike's not incompetent, per se. He just seems very luckless. You know, things just do not work out for him. But he's not, like, bumbling.
Yeah,
he's smart and he's cool, but, he's not going to win every time. And in fact, so far, he can't win for losing, basically. So that's what I like about that, is that they're losers, but not because they're incompetent or bumbling. It's just like
they can't catch a break.
It's not even just that. I think they do just a great, like I was saying, the characterization is just so good because they make them very relatable, right? Because you start that first episode and like Spike is like going through like martial arts like practice patterns, right? Like he's like super badass, really. Like
they established
that, right? But at the same time, they basically juxtapose that with like the character's motivation, which is to eat. It's like the most basic human thing ever.
Yeah.
And like they're all that they're doing boils down to, I need money so I can eat and pay for gas.
Yeah. They don't want to be rich. They just literally want to be able to like live the
it's like
Lone Star.
It's super relatable. Super relatable. And I think that's a great thread that actually ties these episodes together too, right? So even though you have this juxtaposition of like really hard-hitting first episode with like chasing a dog in the second episode, the motivation is still the same. So it doesn't feel like this jarring jump from one to the other.
And it does, which we'll see later on, it handles really well the balancing act between self-contained single episode stories as well as furthering a sort of larger meta-narrative. I guess if I had one complaint with the show is that its larger meta-narrative never gets super well resolved.
Right. There's actually a comment that says, like Gavin Jew, I'm not too sure, at Meth Cookie, so whatever, on Twitter, said, he asked, like, why do we like it? He said, after watching 7 of 26 episodes, it only seems mediocre. And he says, I would assume the plot picks up after. And it's the meta-narrative. It's just...
It does. I mean, like if that's super what you're into and what you want from the show, you might not get it.
Right.
It's just one of those things you sort of have to enjoy. It's more about the journey, not the destination. As trite as that
sounds
is.
like you enjoy the environment, enjoy the characters.
Totally.
Like
yeah,
that's what you should watch for.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then there is a movie at the end, which I'm sure you'll talk about someday.
Indeed. So Marty actually has to jump out.
I do. I have a heart out. I have to go play video games.
Yeah. Go bye.
Terrible
Thank you guys so
life.
much. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank
This
you
was
for being
fun.
here.
I will be on anytime you want.
Awesome.
Bye guys. Thanks.
Bye, Marty.
Bye,
So
Marty.
we're going to keep going on just a little bit. I wanted to do some cool reader shout-outs. We had a lot of you guys using the hashtag IGNMA, which is dumb.
Get it?
I love it, actually. I love myself a good pun.
Yeah, I just wanted something short.
And it's fun.
And we have a lot of really great things on Twitter. For those of you who don't have Twitter, we are working on getting email stuff going, so then you guys can send a good old email. So I just want to call out some like really awesome reactions that we had. A lot of people were saying that they wanted to keep watching episode 3. Go ahead, but just not gonna talk about it till later. So that was like KP Nuts on Twitter and a lot of other people. It's like, thank you guys. I'm happy you guys are enjoying it.
Thank you for so many wonderful suggestions, too. Like, I can't keep up with them all. And people are like, oh, have you seen Plastic Memories? Have you seen Yu Yu Hakusho? Have you seen Cute High Earth Defense Club? And I'm like, no, but I'm gonna get around to it because you guys keep piling on these wonderful suggestions.
So many good suggestions. I mean, from across the board, like Twitter or even like people that I know in real life, like my day-to-day life.
IRL.
They hear that I'm trying to get back into anime, and I just get a slew of suggestions, and then all I can think is, well, now I'm gonna have an anime backlog to go with my video game backlog.
How is this going to get resolved?
Yeah, and then that KP Nuts also said that our show should have been Shirobako, which I kind of wish you would have watched that too. But I'm also super happy we're doing Cowboy Bebop because they're both super great. But yeah, that's kind of like the bigger comments. Chris also. Thanks for sending in your sheet music. That's cool. And then I think someone named Ian Barkis at Ian Your EMD on Twitter also just said that he's just started watching. So cool. You're actually watching while we're recording. And he said that the soundtrack is so good. And yeah, it is.
I can't wait to talk about anime soundtracks because that is one of my favorite topics. I love music. I love anime. I love anime music. So I'm super happy to talk about that someday.
That is absolutely something we will touch on later. And with that, I think that's about everything. So thank you guys for another wonderful episode.
Yes, thank you.
And thanks to Marty Marty.
Yes. Quick shout out to Max Scoville. I did watch the first episode of Samurai Pizza Cats. Loved it. It's bonkers. It's ridiculous. If I'd grown up with that, I think I would have just been enamored with that show. But I was a TMNT girl, so there you go.
Okay, so closing out, if you guys want to follow Marty on Twitter, yell at him for cool Cowboy Bebop thoughts because he had a lot of awesome analysis, and we definitely will have him back on to talk about that later. You can follow him on Twitter at McBiggity, McBiggitty. And you can follow me at Havoc Rose, and that's Havoc with a K. And Lena?
I am at Morphine Ball.
I am at Megan, MEGHAN_IGN.
And as always, we appreciate your thoughts and your comments. We're getting on that email. Hit us up on Twitter, #IGNanime if you want to send any questions just in general. I try to check it when I can. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will be watching episodes 3 and 4 of Cowboy Bebop next week. So join us in for the conversation.
Matane.
Bye.